RaMell is Robert Daniels, film critic, RedWeaver.com.
Thank you for that. Such an incredible film. And I just want to kick it off by, of course, I'm sure everyone, saw the POV of the entire film. And I want to shout out Jomo Frey, your DP on this, who was just, you two did incredible work. And I'm wondering, when you decided to collaborate, what were the early conversations you had, especially about the POV aspect of it? Because I have to think that Jomo must have been a little bit surprised by that approach.
Yeah, thanks for staying, everyone. So many people stayed. The initial conversations were actually more about kind of armchair philosophy, image theory, and Black visuality, a topic that isn't really studied, and how images can be more than the ones that we've seen, and the way that can play a role in a film like this. And I must say the technical process of accomplishing the POV, most of it was done in sort of pre-production with my DSLR, in Jomo's Airbnb in New Orleans, where we just, walked through every scene and attempted movements and talked about how they felt.
And I have to imagine, of course, for the actors, this was kind of a new approach. So when you brought on the wonderful actors who play Elwood and Turner, what conversations did you have with them early on about what this process was going to be and what was it going to entail? Those guys, Ethan Harisi and Brandon Wilson, are quite special, as you see. We actually tried to limit the conversation around the technical aspects of the film with everyone. Everyone was in their department, and of course there overlaps production design and costume and director of photography and whatnot. But coming in, it's such a heavy concept, especially historically. Kind of felt, without articulating it to myself, the less people were thinking about those things, the better chance the film had. And so, they read POV in the script, but if you talk to both of them, I don't think they quite realize the extent to which POV would be executed. And I honestly don't think anyone did, because how can you? There's not a true precedent for an entire film being shot that way. And so then on the day, when we're shooting, it's like, okay, so look into the camera and do this. And they're like, excuse me? And it's like, this is the character, and action. And kind of force them to just take it as a given, and everyone, including Anjanou, who's absolutely beyond astounding in the film, just went with it. And the idea of capturing a kind of history, because the POV can easily be seen kind of as almost a first-person source, but then you also have the documentary elements, the archival footage and the stills and everything like that, and it's almost kind of filling in the gaps of this history that is that the present day Turner is trying to picture to piece together. I'm wondering if you could talk about when those elements kind of came in and what was the thought process behind including those elements.
I think one, and this is kind of in hindsight, because I've been answering a bunch of questions and trying to genuinely figure out how it even happened, because the process was already strange, because my co-writing partner and I, Jocelyn Barnes, were always quite shocked when we'd move to the next step. We wrote this, we did a treatment, and we're like, well, that was fun, kind of go on with life. And then, we get a call all right, let's see what we did an approach, then we do a treatment, then you do a script, then you do a rewrite, then you do a rewrite, and then you're going into production. And so the film, one of the reasons why I think we moved through the process is so
so fluidly or without the hurdles or the pitfalls that I think a lot of films come across, is that it was so rigorously articulated. The original treatment was an edit of the entire film, which is damn close to what's up there right now. Every image, 90% of the images, 95% of the images that are in there were, already imagined. The camera movement was already articulated. And then you can kind of truly imagine what the film looked like if you can read it on paper. It didn't just seem like, yo, trust me to do this POV. It was like, no, these characters are seeing the world in very specific ways. And, I don't know if any of you all have seen Hell County this morning. I actually said this already during the thing. One of the ideas was, what if Elwood and Turner had a camera to make their own Hell Counties this morning, this evening, in that time period? Which is obviously an impossibility, but it gives someone a clear understanding that the way that they move the camera is their head, and that's the way they see the world. So I think that helped.
Well, I think the thing that this has in common with Hell County is how you're not necessarily trying to tell a story, you're trying to tell an experience.
Exactly.
Whether that is, sonically or visually. And I'm wondering if you could talk more about not necessarily adapting Colson Whitehead's words, but more adapting the feel of the book, because the book is so immersive and so within the heads of these characters. Of course, there's the POV element, but there's other elements that you include too.
Yeah. I will go back to the other question, which I always forget the question once I start talking about the archival. And so the archival was in the original treatment, in the original script. One of my favorite things to say is that I made a proof of concept of the montage with myself running in a park in Rhode Island with most of the archival that's in there, because we already had our archival producer before the script was written. So we had a 3-minute sort of proof of concept of the montage, and if we can just get to the montage, it has this strange power. We think it can kind of close the loops or productively open the loops. But your question was, I told you beforehand, it's goldfishy.
Telling the experience rather than telling a story.
Yeah.
How that's a very different thing for a filmmaker.
Yeah, so it's hard to, so I don't know if most of you have read Colson's book, but it's so complete. It's just kind of, if anyone tries to adapt that faithfully, it's a fool's errand, and it will be compared, and it's no way to do it. And so one thing that Jocelyn and Barnes and I decided early is we need to distill it to its essence, and then build our own world. And so the essence of Colson's book, we determined, and it's just our opinion, is love. And it's cliche to say that because love is thrown around, almost in every context all the time for all the reasons, good or bad. But the love that Hattie gives to Elwood, that then opens Elwood up to the love of MLK, which then gives him a worldview, and he goes into Nickel, and Turner gets a glimpse of the love that Elwood had from when Hattie visits, opens him up a little bit to the love that Elwood has, and that kind of becomes the through line. And with that as a sort of line blueprint, and just kind of fill in the rest with the poetics of the visuality of each person's perspective. So we decided to move away from adaptation and get closer to, I don't know, not expansion, because that sounds pretentious, something else.
But it's accurate. It's very accurate. And on that note, I find it fascinating the way that you use the defiant ones throughout the film, and I couldn't help but think about James Baldwin's The Devil All the Time, where he talks about the defiant ones and the space that it occupies in the 60s in terms of race relations. And I feel like you're in conversation with Baldwin a little bit, but you're also in conversation with
Stop it.
So
if I had lighter skin, you would see the blush.
So could you talk about when that became an element, a fully formed element that you kept returning to, and why that became such a big kind of component of the through line of Elwood story.
Yeah, I love the way you organize the question. I think the Defiant Ones, I mean, this entire film is just a whole bunch of impossibilities, you know? We had a live alligator 3 times. You only saw it twice. We had it a 3rd time. We didn't end up using the alligator, but like, what production lets that happen, you know? Yeah, Plan B really offered us all the resources. Yeah, the Defiant Ones is in the novel. It's something that adult Elwood watches on TV. And you know, the second you read that, and I hadn't seen the film yet, heard of, you know, seen clips, watched it, it's such a bizarre parallel, you know, with irony, with realism of the time, also with Sidney Poitier, and his vocals are astounding. We were like, I wonder if we could put this in the film. And then we're like, no, there's no way, but it wasn't MGM film. And you know, obviously, for you all who make films, the difficulty of using footage which represents someone's legacy is near impossible because of rights and because of fear of misuse. And so, yeah, just give a shout out to Alana Mayo from Orion for, you know, going to bat for the use of it in the film. But it's just a Pandora's box of meaning and connection and possibility, separate from Ethan Harisi looking like Sidney Poitier, you know. Yeah, we thought it was a beautiful way to start introducing the idea of the archive, and in a sort of full circle, complete way. It's, as you guys see, there's a variety of ways in which people of color, Black folks specifically, American Black folks, have interacted with photography and film across time, and that was our way of getting the production of Blackness through cinema in.
And there's a collapse of time that's always happening, especially through the archival clips, through the Defiant Ones, a collapse of form too. But I think the primary portion I'm thinking of is the bar scene, which I think is an incredible scene. And I'm wondering if you could talk more about like how that scene just came together, especially with that actor who plays Pete.
Damn. I mean, the film, I always reference How Canada's More Than See Me because it was just like real life. This film was just full of like real life moments where everyone on set is like watching Anjanou do her thing, and we're just like, are we getting this? Please tell me we're recording. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. The bar is one of those moments where, you know, and I think I mentioned this to you before, maybe even the exact same words, but you know how you guys are like watching films and, you know, maybe you guys aren't into PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, and the oil film, I forgot the name of it in this moment. What is it called? There Will Be Oil. It should have been called, just kidding. There Will Be Blood. And like some of Daniel Day-Lewis's stuff, you're just like how does that happen? Like how is it possible for it to be so both fictional and fantasy, but real life and nonfiction and fiction and all of these words that don't describe how things are coalescing? And now, having made a film, I know how it happens. It's fluke. It's just every craftsperson, every technician doing everything and then hoping that the actor activates it and then works with all of the ephemera in a way that is like more than the sum of its parts. Because when Craig Tate was doing that bar scene, it was genuinely, although we had cameras and there's tons of people around in the background, it generally felt like we were just witnessing David, adult Elwood, and Craig Tate having a conversation, you know? Craig Tate walked in as adult Chicky Pete, like twitching and like doing like the rubbing of the leg and like, you know, I would love to take credit for it, but like, I didn't say much to him. I was just like, you do it. I also say that a lot has to do, I realize, with production design, because Nora Mendez did all the production design, and the building of something that is historical, but not a trope of history, that feels like a person can inhabit that space, and it can feel as alive as we feel alive today, knowing that it's the past, is one, a collapse of time, I believe, in a way that, you know, speaks to the relative nature of it, and also its illusionary nature, but it also allows for the characters to like fall into their own delusion, and then magic can happen. And so shout out to Nora.
Thank you, man. I mean, like, this film is magic. I know you scoffed at it being bold, but it really is a bold vision, and I think that scene's so perfect because it brings all these elements together that are perfectly working in the film. And thank you again for the film. And before you leave, I want to bring back up Mimi Plachey.
No one left. Hey, guys. Hey, he's leaving. Come back.
So, the festival programmers were so blown away when we saw the film for consideration. And so the Chicago International Film Festival is honored to present you with our Vanguard Award.
That's so cool. Oh, yeah.
So, RaMell, this is for your masterfully bold and immersive way you bring to life the story of the Nickel Boys, inviting the viewer to inhabit the inner lives of the characters, creating a deeply intimate, pathos-filled, and poetic journey that lingers long after the film ends. And for this, we are proud to present you with our Vanguard Award. Thank you so much.
I'll also say, all jokes aside, as most of you know, that it is based on the Dozier School for Boys, which is a reform school that was closed in 2011. I think 2013 they started to exhume the bodies, and this is from Coulson's sort of deep research. And so I think one thing that's really interesting about the film is that